Mr. Bowtie's Texas High School Sports Machine is driven by Henry Finley and McCombs Ford West, a proud supporter of all area local sports. McCombs Ford West, simply the best. Hey folks, Mr. Bowtie here. Keep banging home that red subscribe button on your screen so that way you can stay up to date on all the great local sports coverage that TV and radio refuse to cover. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Mr. Bowtie 1982. It's fun, it's free, and it's safe for the environment. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hey folks, Greg Sherman, Mr. Bowtie on YouTube and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the week of the girls basketball state semis and finals here in San Antonio. 23 teams will be getting on a bus and making a pilgrimage down to San Antonio. One team will get on a bus but lives here in town, so they won't have to go quite as far. Over the next little bit of time, we'll break down all the classifications, who we think is going to win, and which 6 out of the 24 teams that will be coming will go home with the Golden Trapezoid. Just remember, of course, that to subscribe to my channel, you can find that link right there on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Mr. Bowtie 1982. As always, we bring in the king of social media, the one who taught Paris Hilton how to do everything on Telegram and InstaFace and Instacart and other things that I have no idea about. A man with 20 titles and 25 state semifinal appearances. That would be Joe Lombard, and for the first time in a little bit, Joe, you're coming down here, but it's not as a participating team as Canyon lost in the semis. Let's talk about that later. But Joe, it's always good to have you on and break down all these teams.
Hey, thanks, Greg. It's always fun to be here, and I love talking basketball. And with the state tournament, that's my favorite week of the year. So, going to be some great matchups, great games. And I think we're gonna have a super weekend of watching games be played. I'm looking forward to coming down. I've got a couple honor teams: 1996 25-year anniversary, in 2011 a 10-year anniversary, and so looking forward to seeing all those kids and sharing some old memories, and then of course watching the games in the Alamo Dome.
Absolutely, we'll talk more about all of that great stuff later on. I want to remind you, Joe's book, More Than a Coach. I know we've been plugging it throughout our series, but make sure you pick it up. It's a really good read, and all the proceeds go to a great cause. You can find that on your favorite online retailer or brick and mortar store. Get in touch with Joe. Again, Joe will be down here in San Antonio later on this week. As I mentioned, we're going to break down all the different classifications. If you want to stay with us the whole time, we would be so grateful. We have a lot of great guests that will be coming on. Joe has been on horseback from the Panhandle all the way to East Texas to get coaches on. Hopefully next year he'll learn about this new invention called an airplane. But if you want to fly ahead and you don't want to stay for all the classifications, you just want to go to the one that interests you the most, you can find that time and click on that in the description. Well, Joe, we'll get to the coaches in a moment, but the honor teams were backed up a year. There were no honor teams last year, but things are back to normal with the semis Thursday and Friday and the gold medal matches on Saturday. Last year's semis were up to the coaches to find out, and it brings back a little bit of normalcy. But I know at the same time, Joe, when we taped the first round preview, a lot of coaches kind of like that format of having the regionals at predetermined sites as well as the state semis at the Dome, but it's back to normal this year.
Yeah, well, the state tournament's it's a treat for people to go watch. And when you get to see this many games and all these teams, it's a great way to spend your Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I talk to people all the time that go to the state tournament every year. And last year with the COVID, it was a little more difficult, but, we still had pretty good crowds. But I think this year, like you said, back to normal and back to a great weekend of girls basketball. And of course, next week will be the boys basketball. And so it's fun to be back in that mode. And like I said, it's going to be some great matchups, some great games.
Before we send you off to our first guest, one thing that has popped up as usual is the seeding. How are things done? For those of you that are not familiar with it, there is no power poll. There's no rankings. The UIL will take the 4 teams once they verify their records. The top 2 teams are placed opposite each other, and then the other 2 teams are drawn for seeding. And Joe, we'll mention it later on, especially in your home classification. 4A, where there's some people that prefer the power polls, especially with Hardin-Jefferson and Argyle playing each other in the semis instead of the finals. Joe, what is your thoughts on it? I know the coaches speak maybe who cares? We got to beat 2 out of 3 anyways, but do you prefer there to be a different order for that it should be drawn? Maybe the TABC do it, or how do you see it?
Well, it's been like this for years. Where the top 2 seeds go the opposite direction. So it's been like that for years. I think all coaches are just excited to be there, and there's probably no easy draw. You're going to have somebody that's a pretty good team. So, me personally, I'm good with whatever they want to do. Now, I think it would be great to have the top 2 teams opposite, but sometimes it's hard to tell who the top 2 teams are. You can't always go by record. So, but there are this year, like I said, in 4A for sure, there's a great matchup in round 1, but you could probably say that in every classification, there's going to be some really good first round games.
Absolutely. And Joe, as we mentioned, all the guests that appear, we'll mention it a few times again, we'll get a chance to read that great book and get a bowl of Babs Lombard's delicious tortilla soup. Well, Joe, let's get off and running, as we already have the guests waiting for us. Our first one. Let's talk about 1A. And Joe, I gotta say that you absolutely nailed it at the start of the tournament when you thought that Ackerly Sands would beat Nazareth, and they went and that they would get there. And Joe, you got it absolutely correct. And they used a 21-3 run, shut out Naz in the third quarter of their 4th round game, and they ended up winning that. They ended up beating Turkey Valley, a fellow Panhandle team, to get to the state semifinals. And joining us is somebody who I actually used to know real well, got to cover him early in my career, and that is Ben Connell, the head coach of Ackerly Sands. And Ben, Joe knows how you did it. The rest of us want to know, how did you do that with Nazareth?
Good morning, Ben. Good to have you.
Hey, good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great.
All right. Good morning, Joe. Nice to talk to you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, Ben, tell us about how you managed to shut out Nazareth in a quarter. And it was the first time, I think, since they had played Dodge City in the state final, at least in the playoff game, that they were shut out in a quarter.
Well, we went into halftime. We were down by 3, and we decided we were struggling a little bit on the shooting end, that we were going to pick up the defensive intensity and really deny them on entry into the wing. We also decided to press them in the third quarter, and we came out pressed, and I think they were a little shocked with that, caused some turnovers. And even when they got in the half court, we extended the pressure, decided to go one-on-one with their post, not help on the post, just put a lot of pressure. We started taking some steals away from the guards. Stat-wise, we outscored them off of turnovers 19-0. So we turned those turnovers into points, and then we didn't turn the ball over. And I think that caused a lot of frustration for them.
Ben, was it Ackerly Sands? To clear the air, I was actually working in West Texas for about 5 years, which was the tail end of Ben's first time at Ackerly Sands, which is 25 miles northwest of Big Spring. They do play 6-man football. Then he went up, coached in the Lubbock area, came back, and Wayne Henderson, who has been there since Ackerly Sands was about 5 schools that were combined back in the day. This is the old Sands Mustangs hat that he has. Again, we are neutral and we are unbiased here, but just wanted to show that Sands is officially into the state semifinals, first time ever in girls basketball based on the current format. Back in the day, they made it to the quarters when the last 3 rounds went. Sands is there. Robert Lee, which is out of the San Angelo area, they are in for the second time. They won the title the only time that they've been there back in 1978. Huckabay in for the 3rd time in their school history, first time since 2006. And then we get to Neches, who has been there 10 times. They were there last year, but they lost in the semis to Dodge City back when the semis were not held at the Dome. And Ben, this is kind of a good mix of schools that have been there before. You're going to get Huckabay right away, and a lot of people think could be the state championship game. Huckabay out of the East Texas area. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then tell us a bit about Huckabay.
Well, Sands, we're guard oriented. We're pretty short, so we rely on a lot of speed. We've had success in the past and actually in the track, and we put a lot of speed on the court. And we try to play guard oriented. We're going to do a lot of things through our guards. and we play inside out. And we're going to put a lot of pressure on your guards with our speed. And then we try to help and dig a lot on the inside game. When Huckabay is guard oriented, what I've seen so far also, they got some really good guards. They got a point guard, a young sophomore who handles the ball really well. They have a senior on the outside who is a good shot, great shooter. They're guard oriented. So I think what you're going to see is a matchup between a lot of skill in the guard position. Who's ever watching this game is going to enjoy it. I think there's going to be they press, what we've seen on film. We like to press. So it's going to be, if you were looking for the big person to be in the game, the ball going inside the big people, I think the game's more of driving and dishing and pressing and getting up and down the floor. I think it's going to be extremely entertaining for the fans to watch. And it's two teams that are pretty equal, that like attacking from the same area.
Yeah, and looking over some of your results, 35-3 coming in. Among the losses, one to Martin's Mill, who is in the 2A semis once again. They lost to Canadian, a team who lost at the regional level. Y'all beat Nazareth by 1, opened up the season with a loss against Sudan. That 35-3 record is pretty strong. Huckabay is 35-6 against, trying to skim through all of the records that we can. Robert Lee is 34-2, and then Neches is 30-6, and Neches, a team that will come in bunches, Joe. Neches has not been to the state semifinals in the traditional format since 2012, but a lot of people forget that was the dynasty before Naz got going. They went there 4 straight years to the state semifinals, won a slew of state championships. In fact, Neches, Joe, has only lost 2 times at the semifinal level. So when they get to the finals, they're a team that usually closes the deal.
Yeah, well, I've heard of Neches, and I've seen them at the state tournament before. And I'm not sure, I didn't read the other day, maybe Ben knows. Did I read where they start 5 freshmen?
We've noticed, yes, sir, definitely 4 get major playing time. 4 freshmen get major playing time.
That's pretty impressive. Hey, Ben, I wanted, just on the record, I thought I said it was a toss-up game between Nazareth and Sands. And now I knew Sands was good, but I have not seen you guys play. And it's kind of it isn't a thing over the last 2 or 3 years, hasn't Sands just kind of been on the rise and kind of getting closer and closer, and finally kind of got over the hump this year?
Yes, sir. We went to regional quarterfinals 2 years with the same group that when they were freshmen and sophomores. Regional semifinals on a tough heartbreaker last year with the juniors. I have 5 seniors that get major playing time and 2 juniors. So
Wow.
they've been battling to this point.
Yeah.
In their response, when we finally beat Nazareth, like you're saying, got over the hump. We've
Yeah.
been trying to get over this hump
Yes.
over and over for the last 4 years.
Well, you have to battle that mental thing, I know. And talk about perseverance, Bill, just hanging there and finally be able to knock the door down. I mean, I think it's a great tribute to you, great coaching job, and of course those kids who've been with you through those last 3 or 4 years. So it's exciting to see. I know I have many friends in Nazareth. I know they're heartbroken, but it's also fun to see other people, other teams, and be able to enjoy the fruits of hard work. So congratulations.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
look forward to watching you play, man. What are you running on offense?
We run just for guard oriented. We spread the ball out and run 5 out and lots of cutting, kind of give them freedom because they are upperclassmen.
Yeah.
I try to not coach too much. We have to set something up. Then we run some set plays, pick and roll. We are not very post oriented. We're going to try. We play inside out a lot. So we're going to get the ball either driving or getting into a side to a post, and we're going to kick it out for the outside side.
That's awesome. Hey, again, I'm looking forward to watching you play. Is one of your kids now signed to go to Angelo State?
Yes, sir. That is Landry Morrow. I know I'm biased, but I think she actually is one of the best players in the state of Texas. I don't care what classification. When you get to see her play, she doesn't score 20 points a game because she doesn't need to. She has great teammates. But when you see her pass, play defense, and rebound, she's one of the best in the state of Texas, period.
I'm looking forward to seeing her. You know, Greg, it doesn't matter 1A, 5A, 6A, whatever. There's great players in there. In girls basketball, there's great players in every classification. And, there's Sands. I haven't seen them play, but they might could win a state title in another classification. Who knows? I mean, it's just when there's only 5 players on the court, sometimes those small schools can step up and really beat the big schools. So if I'm not mistaken, I think Sands beat 6A Friendship this year.
Yes, sir.
And Friendship beat us. So I know Friendship has a really good team.
Yeah, you mentioned 1A. I did have a chance to see one of the boys' games down here, Tilden McMullen County. By the way, congrats to their girls. They finally got over the hump. They got to the 4th round before getting knocked out. And those teams that can run up and down the court like a McMullen County, you can tire out just about anybody. But Ben, I want to get your thoughts as well on Robert Lee, because that's a school on your side of the state, as well as Neches, because Neches may end up being the team that a lot of people are not thinking about, because they're on in the 70s. They went 4 times in 5 years. In 09 through 12, they went 4 straight years. Looks like this may be their second run. Tell us a little bit about those other teams and other matchup.
Robert Lee, we've just watched a little bit of film on Robert Lee and Neches, and what I've seen of Robert Lee is they have a little more size than everybody else. They have Braylee Hood, who's a senior. She's an outstanding player. They're going to go orient around her, but this is going to be new for them, like you just mentioned. I think they're going to have lots of nerves, but they are a little bit bigger and will pound it in, take it in, drive on you. Neches, like Joe said, is young. They're very young. They're 4 freshmen. They're very good athletes. They're outside shooters. They have one post that plays on the inside. That's going to give everybody they play a little bit more trouble. I think she might be the tallest player there. I'm looking kind of here at my notes. And they have a guard who shoots extremely well. She's a freshman. So I think they're going to see some really good shooting. I know some people say when you get in the dome that it's hard to shoot without that background not there. But I think Robert Lee and Neches, if you look at some of their scores, they put up some points. They put up in the 50s and 60s on people. That's because they're very good shooters. I think Huckabay and Sands are more defensive oriented. Their scores are a little bit lower. So when you get to that championship game, whether it's Sands, Huckabay against Robert Lee or Neches, you're going to see offense versus defense. And I guess we'll see who wins on that. Everybody says defense wins championships, but where they're very talented offensive shooters at Robert Lee and Neches, they put up some points.
You know, Greg, those Class A gyms aren't quite the same as the Alamo Dome. And sometimes, you know, being going down for the first time, sometimes teams don't always play their best just because of the, you know, making it bigger than what it really is. And so I think those teams that can play their game and be semi-calming, have some poise, I think they have an advantage. And so it'll be interesting to see how all this turns out. But I think with Sands coming out of Region 1, I think they are going to be the team to beat. So I can't wait to watch Ben and his team. And I know they're going to put on a great show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Robert Lee and Neches will be the first semifinal of the day, 8:30 in the morning. And then Sands and Huckabay will play about 20 minutes after that. Well, Ben, I know you have to get back to class. We definitely appreciate you stopping by, and I'll be looking to reunite with you. I haven't seen you in a while. I think it was about 7 Joe Lombard and Nazareth state championships ago that I last saw you, but we're going to see some new blood, and it'll be interesting to see, does Sands do what Grady did on the boys' side, get to the finals but not get over the hump? Can Sands get over the hump? Will Huckabay, who is also highly ranked, win that elusive title? Will Robert Lee keep it perfect, where the only time they went to the semis ever, they won a title? Or are we about to see the dawn or the rebirth of the Neches dynasty, a team that won 3 volleyball titles in a row before seeing that come to an end in 2021? Ben, Connell, definitely appreciate the time and look forward to seeing you here at the Alamo Dome. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much for having me. Joe, it was great to talk to you.
You bet. Good luck, Ben. Wish you the best. Great job this year.
Joe, we move on to Class 2A, which the state semifinals will be on Friday morning. Again, everything is back in their traditional slots. Gruver, who won the state championship 2 years ago, they are back for more fun. They will take on Saba. The Armadillos, you always think about armadillos, you think about the old Replacements movie with Texas State back in the day. The other semifinals, Stamford, a school that won a state title in softball last year with their new athletic director, Britt Hart, a good friend of mine. They're taking on a traditional power, Martins Mill. They're back for the 16th time, 15 in the last 17 years. Gruver, one of 4 teams that started the playoffs in the undefeated. 3 teams made it to the state semifinals that were undefeated. Gruver is 31-0. And Joe, we have joining us the head coach of Gruver. And Joe, you know him real well. I'll let you introduce him.
Hey, well, I'm welcome. I'm grateful to get to introduce Trent Lankford, head coach of Gruver High School. Known Trent a long time. He, in fact, is his second stint at Gruver and as head coach, and he took another team to this. Well, I guess it was Austin, wasn't it, Trent?
No, it was Alamo.
Was it Alamo Dome? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
All right.
15.
And then he has been assistant coach at Amarillo High a long time with Jeff Williams. And Trent's a great coach. So happy for Trent and for the city of Gruver to be making this trip to the Alamo Dome. So Trent's got a great team, got a great player, and but besides Bailey Maupin, they've got a lot of other good players too. So they've had a great year. So welcome, Trent.
Thank you.
They have players looking at their roster. Cameron Arms, who was on that state title team 2 years ago. All the seniors were sophomores back then. 31-0. We'll talk about the unbeaten record in a moment. Cammie Whitehead, I remember covering her and Bailey Maupin on that state title team. But I got to ask you first off, the name Conyers is a synonymous name in the Panhandle. A lot of people know Jalen. I know him as a good friend of mine playing football at Arizona State, won 2 football titles with Gruver, won a basketball title at Stinnett, West Texas, took Gruver to the state finals where they lost, and then took them to the semis again, which got wiped out by the virus. Callie Conyers, I'm hearing, is making Jalen Conyers look average, so to speak. So I want to start there with Callie. Tell us about her, Trent.
She's been playing really well lately. She's filling her role. She's attacking the glass. She's able to stretch the defense by stepping out and hitting the 3. She hit, I believe, 2 threes in the final versus Wellington. She finished with 19 points because she's a tough matchup because she can, again, go inside. She can play outside. She runs the floor really well for us. So she's our rabbit in transition sometimes. And then defensively, she does a good job for us down inside, guarding their bigs and getting rebounds. So she's just a complete player and a really, really great kid overall. Smart, too. She's really smart.
Yeah, and looking at y'all's record, 31-0, this is not a soft 31-0 like sometimes you might see teams get to the state semis and they haven't played a whole lot. Looking over the list, they beat Idalou, they beat Claude, they beat Tascosa by 40, beat Nazareth by 16, beat New Home, they beat Borger by 57, they beat Stinnett, West Texas by 74. Oh, yeah, and they beat New Home in overtime in the 4th round, beat Wellington in the state quarterfinals. Wellington, one of those schools that just can't quite get over the hump, shows you the depth of the Panhandle. And, oh, yeah, Joe, I see here they beat y'all 49-44, and I know you were saying a couple things off air about that game.
Hey, I know for a fact they've got a great team. And
well, they're undefeated. They're not. This is not the Detroit Pistons.
Well, we were probably fortunate to play them that close. They might have blown us out any other time. So Trent's got a great team, and I really think they're going to be the favorite. I hate to tell you that, Trent, but I think they're the team to beat. But when you get to this level, just you never know when the teams show up if they're going to have that poise it takes to win a title.
Right.
But I think because of his schedule, those kids are going to be used to the pressure and big game atmosphere. So we can test they're legitimate. They're really good. Bailey Maupin's best player in West Texas, but they got some other really good players too, and they're very well coached by Mr. Lankford. So they've got the whole package. And Maupin is great. She's an early signee with Texas Tech, a 6-foot guard, and you don't see that on the 2A level too much. So they're pretty special.
Yeah, Trent was waiting for you to to pop on in. I was actually going over the box score from that state championship game against Munster a couple of years ago. Maupin only had 4. Arms, who was a sophomore, she had 16. Whitehead had 6. And so you return a lot of that back, and you're going to take on Saba 31-7, might not quite as strong as Gruver, but they've won their playoff games by 50, by 49, 14, 26 over Hearn in the 4th round, and then Norman G by 40. So that's a team that's been rolling, but the strength of schedule certainly is with Gruver. Tell us what you know about the mighty Armadillos who are in for the second time.
They've got length. Their effort and their hustle is really, really good. They're a 1-2-2 full court press team. So they're going to look to trap early, rotate, try to get some steals off their press, and then they'll fall back into a 1-2-2 in the half court. And again, they've got 5'11", 5'10", 5'8", another 5'9" girl. So their length is definitely an asset for their zone. And then they run the floor really well. They turn those, get the turnovers, and they get out and run. And so they definitely present a different challenge. We have to, be solid with the basketball. We have to shorten our passes. We call catch and peek, look to attack. And so it's going to be a puzzle that we'll have to solve as we go through the game. But I'm certainly very confident in my team because I think we've had a lot of challenges this year in different ways, like you were talking about with our strength of schedule. And we've met all those challenges. And so we've done a good job with execution of things. And again, we hadn't been in some close games until recently. So like the new home game was an overtime game. Again, we had resolve, we had resiliency because it wasn't perfect. And like Coach Lombard and I were talking, you'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. And that certainly wasn't just a stellar, everything was perfect game, but we found a way to win and it's survive and advance at this point. So I'm really, really super proud of my team and the effort we're given. But it's going to be a challenge down there for sure, just because of their speed, their length, and their execution of what they do on defense.
And looking at the other side of the state semifinals, Stamford will take on Martins Mill. Martins Mill, since 2006, has only missed going to the state semis twice. They actually beat Gruver in 2015 for a state title. We'll get to Martins Mill in a moment. Stamford in for the first time. I told everybody a moment ago, Stamford won a state title in softball. Shanley Mueller is a name that some of y'all may not be familiar with in the world of basketball. But in softball last year, they took on Crawford, a team that is a dynasty in the world of softball. Crawford built up a 3-run lead, which in softball is a pretty significant lead. There was a lightning delay. They came back out in Austin, and Crawford was on their way to victory. But then Crawford had 5 errors / screw-ups in one inning. The last was when Shanley Mueller popped up the ball in the air. At least I think it was Shanley Mueller. Popped it up in the air. The third baseman, a freshman, all she had to do was make the catch and they would have won the title. Dropped the ball, 2 runs scored, and Stamford went on to win the title. And when I asked Mueller, again, if I have my names correct, if not, the Stamford folks can correct me. I asked her what her thought was going when the ball was in the air about to be caught before it was dropped. And she said, "Oh, crap." So we'll see if the "oh, crap" happens the second time. And Stamford, coached by Joe Crabb, Martins Mill, coached, of course, by the venerable Tommy Cross. So tell us a little bit about either of y'all. Tell me a little bit about those two teams and Stamford, who beat Lipan in the quarterfinals to get here.
I can talk a little bit about Stamford and Martins Mill. Stamford they have length as well. They 6 foot, 5'11", 5'10". I think they have another 5'11" girl. They're a zone pressing team too. They're a 1-2-2. Their best player is number 25. She's a really dynamic player. She attacks the rim really well. She's at the top of their press. Just a little bit of film I've watched. But it's another zone pressing team that will get after you. They play hard. And again, their strength is obviously their length and their aggressiveness. And then on the other side is Martin's Mill, and Coach Cross has been there for a long time. And Martin's Mill is Alamo Dome's kind of the home away from home for them. But they're a little bit smaller, not quite as big, but they're obviously a dynamic team. Really good guard play. And I believe they're more of a dribble drive team, but they're always predominantly strong out of the region, and the expectation is a big thing. So two really good teams on the other side, but we've got one as well as far as facing a really strong Saba team.
Yeah, and I'm going to warn the folks that Stamford team may be a lot more dangerous than people think. In fact, the pitcher on that softball team who won the title, I think she may be going D1, maybe even to the University of Texas. Her name is Citlali Gutierrez. She's a statistician, and so there may be some X factor experience with Mueller and Gutierrez. And sometimes you win a title in one sport, it can carry over to another, albeit a big environment. The Dome is big, but at McCombs Field in Austin, you have the crowd on top of you. So that's something, folks, to keep your eye on. If Stanford's able to feed off that softball state championship, they could. You never know what can happen. Well, Trent, I want to get you out here on this one. You weren't there a couple years ago when you were still, I think, at Amarillo when Gruver won the title. We got to ask you, not about how you all win, not about how you stay perfect, how you got there, but the send-off they had a couple years ago. It was kind of like the old Ponderosa send-off where they had, it seemed like everybody in Gruver and the Panhandle was in a line to get out there. What are they planning out there on the send-off later this week?
I'm not sure. We had a meeting this morning, an administration meeting this morning to kind of go over things for the week. And somebody asked about the horse riders. So I think there'll be some people on some horses, some guys on some horses with some flags. Gruver just does it we just do it a little different as far as supporting our kids and sending them off in fashion. And I think there'll be a couple of drones flying around. It's really a neat process. They don't include me much in it just because they know that I'm busy with other things, but they did mention that this morning.
Hey, Trent, my only advice is stay off the horse.
Yes.
Don't let them talk you into getting on the horse.
Only horse I'm just getting on the bus.
Yeah, that brings up the old 1993 Sooner Schooner incident where the Roughneck Queen fell off the horse, and they about 60,000 people, as the stadium was at the time, Oklahoma, learned something intimate about the Roughneck Queen. We'll save that for the happy hour version of the show. By the way, Saba, coached by Chris Jost, who has well over 400 wins, probably at or near the 500 win club. Want to remember that. Trent, definitely appreciate the time, and whether you travel by horse, by bus, by airplane, or just walk on down here, appreciate the time. Look forward to seeing y'all, Saba, Stamford, and Martin's Mill here Friday morning at the Alamo Dome.
Thank you for having me on, Coach Lombard. It was great visiting with you. Greg, thank you so much.
On to Class 3A, the state semifinals. The first semifinal will be Fairfield, a team who's gone from a Cinderella upset of Argyle in the 4A state final 2 years ago to dominating the 3A since they went down. They'll go down and play Idalou. That's Ida and Lou out of the Panhandle area. The other state semifinal matchup, Bishop from the Corpus Christi area will take on appropriately named Winnsboro. You want to make sure you have win in there somewhere. That'll be the other semifinal. And joining us from Idalou, ironically, Idalou making their first girls appearance. They've won titles on the boys' side under this guy, Tyler Helms, the head coach. And Tyler, we mentioned that usually it's a grind to get to when you get to the third round of the playoffs. But for y'all, it started right away in round number 2. And ever since then, for y'all, it's been a grind. You survive, and you guys get to go to San Antonio.
Yes, sir. We're excited for our program. Really, for us, it started in round 1 with Spearman. Coach Richardson is a phenomenal coach, and so we really didn't have any cakewalks in any of the rounds from the very get-go, from by-district round all the way through to the regional final, and I think that us being able to survive that gauntlet hopefully gives us some confidence going down to San Antonio. Obviously, we feel like Region 1 is loaded with great players and great coaches, and we were just fortunate that this time the ball fell our way. We've been close many times before and just didn't play our best at the end, and we were excited that our kids found a way to play their best at the end this time.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those where we mentioned the second round, you get Brownfield. Usually the first couple of rounds, you get a chance to get warmed up and get going, but somebody split a district title, lost a flip, and that's how the matchup happened. And you're getting what could have been a potential state quarterfinal in round number 2, and you win that by 5 and move on from there. You beat Bushland in the 3rd round, Peaster in the 4th round, Canadian in the state quarterfinals. 31-6 is the record. Tell us briefly about your team.
Well, you're starting with the second round. We're very familiar with Brownfield. We were in their district 2 years ago, and we've played them 5 or 6 times over the past couple of years. So both of us were very, very familiar with each other, and it was a deal where we knew what we had to do to beat them. We just had to go out and execute it. And once we survived that, I thought it gave us a whole lot of confidence moving forward. And you could tell just in the way we were playing that we knew that we could win the region. Because we know that Brownfield brought everybody back from last year and won the whole thing last year. We have size on our team. I think that's the equalizer for us. We have a couple kids that are 3 or 4 year players for us, Logan Hurd and Taylor Houston. They're kind of our foundation. And then from there, we just have everybody playing their role, everybody doing what they're asked to do. And, we've been playing very unselfish basketball, especially in the playoffs. Starts on the defensive end, willing to take charges, willing to get to 50-50 balls, and then offensively just taking good shots, playing through our best players. And then our role players really stepped up this past weekend, knocking down some open shots.
2 years ago, Fairfield, again, when they were in Class 4A, not a lot of people thought of them. Fairfield beat Dallas Lincoln at that time in the state semifinals. Then they took on Argyle, who had been there, and I'm looking at my notes, just trying to look things over briefly. They played Argyle, who that year was 32-6. They were down by 17, 18 points early out of the gate. A lot of people had already engraved Argyle's name on the trophy. Then all of a sudden they come all the way back under Sally Whitaker, the head coach. They win that in overtime, pulling off what some people thought was one of the bigger upsets that we've seen in some time. They had 2 Brackens on the roster at the time. Now they have 3 Brackens on the roster, went on to success last year as well. And that's a program, Joe and Tyler, that sometimes when you get that win and you maybe aren't expecting it to win that title, all of a sudden it spurs on explosive growth.
Greg, through the years, Fairfield's been known for having lots of talent. And I think they've been here a couple other times. But that win over Argyle, that was amazing. They made a tremendous comeback. And ever since then, and especially this year, as Tyler can attest, they look really impressive. They've had a lot of blowout wins against good teams. And so Idalou is going to face a team that probably has a lot of athleticism, I'm guessing, and a team that can score some points. So what do you think, Tyler? Tell us about Fairfield.
Yeah, it definitely starts with the athleticism. I think trying to figure out a way to keep the game in the half court and trying to figure out a way to keep them off the offensive glass for us is what stands out immediately. We've done a really good job of that in the playoffs so far, but obviously we haven't played anybody to Fairfield's athleticism is the way I view it when I'm watching tape on them so far. If we continue to execute how we have been executing, we do feel like we're going to be tough to beat, or we're at least going to be in the game. But them being there before, but we were fortunate to do that on the boys' side a couple times. It's significant when you have a team that's already been there. And so we know that we're fighting against that too, because they've already been to the Dome. They understand what it takes to play state championship basketball. And we're hoping that this run that we've had in the playoffs has kind of given us the confidence and the experience we need to get done there and play at a high level against great competition. But for us, to me, the two keys are try to figure out how to not turn it over against them, keep the game in the half court, and then figure out a way to try to keep them off the offensive glass.
The other side, the other semifinal matchup, Winnsboro, who made it 2 years ago to the state semifinals, lost, and was eventually won by Shallow Water. They're in for the 14th time overall. They will take on Bishop, who's probably better known for their baseball, though Bishop is in for the second straight year. It's interesting to note about Winnsboro. They have 3 state championships, won 3 in a row in 99, 2000, 2001. When they don't win the state championship, the majority of teams that ended up winning the championship came out of the Panhandle. Talia, Canyon, Dimmitt, Comanche, which is West Texas, so not the Panhandle. Canyon 2 more times, Polk, which is just down the road from San Antonio, Jim Ned in the Amarillo, in the Abilene area, Brock, and then Shallwater last year. So Winnsboro, a team that is used to getting there, and when they're not having to run into the Panhandle, they quite often are able to go home with a title.
Yes, sir. I was able to watch Winnsboro a couple years ago at the state tournament, and it feels like they have their best couple players I noticed on the roster from that team. Hopefully we can get past Fairfield and find out who's going to be on the other side on Saturday. But they just look like they try to get the ball inside to their big girl, and are just sound defensively. Do a good job of just playing basketball that translates regardless of what area of the state they're going to play against. I mean, anytime that you can play good half-court D and then you can throw the ball inside and draw fouls or play inside out, that normally translates against whoever you play. And so if we're fortunate to get to Saturday, we know we'll definitely have our hands full.
The fourth team is Bishop. Mentioned they're more of a baseball power. They got to the state semifinals for the first time ever last year. Again, the semis were not played at the Dome. They played Fairfield, and they lost by 37 points. Fairfield then lost to Brownfield in the state title game. And Bishop, we mentioned a senior-laden team. It was between them and Aransas Pass to see who was going to get here. They beat 2 of the San Antonio. They beat Aransas Pass in the 3rd round by 19. Beat San Antonio Cole from here in town by 17 the 4th round. Got out to an early lead on Lytle and won by 25 points. Lytle's coach, by the way. Those that maybe are looking for fashion, that's inspired by the old Waco La Vega coach, Lori Wilson, their head coach. She has some of the best shoes in the state of Texas. Unfortunately, the fans will have to wait another year to be able to see those potentially at the Alamo Dome. And so this is Tyler, this is really Idalou. It's kind of strange. They may have the best strength of schedule, but they have the least experience among the other 3 teams that are going there, because all of them have been to the state semis. I think all 3 of them have been there within the last 2 years.
Yes, sir. We know that we haven't been to the Dome, but we also know that we're fortunate to be in an area where we can play the best teams. Obviously we've played a lot of good teams this year: Canyon, Lubbock Cooper, Friendship, Shallow Water's in our district. And then, the run that we had in the playoffs, we played against perennial powers. And so if we can figure out a way to not let the lights at the Dome and just, the different venue affect us, we feel like we do actually have the experience to go down there and be successful, because we've definitely been playing against the teams that are going to prepare us to play against that type of competition.
Joe, let me ask you this, because you've obviously been to the semis and won titles in different ways. Which is more important, strength of schedule, playing tougher competition, or is it the experience of playing in the venue that's being hosted?
Well, both. But
you only get to pick one.
Yeah, I think that strength of schedule, I think that's really good, because if you have kind of gotten used to playing against those good people, and when you see, of course, you're going to see good people at the state tournament. Well, I've been there, done that. And so it's not a shock for the kids to adjust and play on that level at all. I will say I do sometimes see those first-year teams come down and a little nervous, a little jittery at the state tournament, especially in a gym like the Alamo Dome. But I think with Idalou, they've played some great teams. And like you said, every game in the playoffs was against a state-ranked team. So, wow, they came out of a gauntlet of teams that Brownfield was they had 5 starters back from last year's state championship team, and Idalou was better. And so at least they were better on that day, right, Tyler? And so they're well coached. Tyler does a great job. They're well coached, but he's got some good players that are difference makers. And then, like he said, he's got some of those kids that are really great role players that are taking care of their jobs too. So I think Idalou's going to be a tough out. And Tyler, man, I wish you the best of luck. I think you're right there with the best of them.
Yes, sir. We appreciate it. You know, we've been there and seen the team that goes. You know, when Tate was at Wall, we played them a couple times in the regional final. We've played Shallowater a couple times in the regional final. You know, we saw Brownfield firsthand 5 or 6 times these past couple of years. And so we feel like our kids know what state championship basketball looks like. It's just a matter of getting down there and making sure that we play like we're capable of playing.
Tyler Helms, the head coach of Idalou. We know you got to get going and obviously get adjusted to the Dome, and we'll see you down here. The semifinals Thursday afternoon. Fairfield 38-1 will take on Idalou 31-6, which is probably just as good as being an undefeated team. The other side will be Winnsboro and Bishop. Again, that is a good Thursday afternoon slot, so the fans can get down here and be able to enjoy some really good weather. Tyler, appreciate the time, and we will see you in San Antonio.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Move on to Class 4A, and once again, we have some guests that are standing by. We actually have 2 guests. A lot of people saw that Donnie Ott was on the second round preview in Class 5A a few weeks ago. Donnie Ott and Cedar Parker in the state semis. We'll talk about them later on. All of a sudden, everybody wants to be on the show because we do not have the Manning brothers curse. Everybody's like, hey, if we come on the show, we're going to win a state title show. So the curse, I guess, was a little bit broken when Argyle beat Canyon. And ironically enough, Argyle will play Hardin-Jefferson. A lot of people thought that would be the state final, but it's a state semifinal. Brownsboro and Fredericksburg will play in the other semifinal. Fredericksburg won on one of the more unbelievable finishes where Fredericksburg missed a shot. Bernie had possession. The Bernie player was trapped under the basket, tried to pass it off to somebody. Instead, it went right into the hands of one of the Fredericksburg players who laid it up as time expired. And that was how Fredericksburg gets back for the second time in 3 years. So a little bit of lunacy. And Joe and I are the masters of lunacy. And joining us are the head coaches, the teams that will be playing in the state semifinals. That would be Mike Fogo of Hardin-Jefferson, Chance Westmoreland of Argyle. So I know everybody's got pen and paper ready to go, but guys, thanks for joining us. And there's a slew of power in this area. And Joe, I'm gonna actually turn a little bit of this over to you because you've played Argyle. It's oftentimes been between you and them for the title. Hardin-Jefferson, you played them last year. I may just go sit back, get a cup of coffee.
Well, let me say thanks for both of you guys being on this program with Greg. You know, how can you turn down an invitation to be with Mr. Bowtie? And,
Easy. Oh, I'm sorry.
But hey, what we have for all the viewers, and I think all of our viewers probably know these 2 guys and they're great programs. You've got number 1 and number 2 in the state all year long, and just great programs with great teams this year, great coaches, great players, and looking forward to this matchup where Argyle and Hardin-Jefferson play the first round. And so I think Argyle, as many of you know, went undefeated this year, had a great run. We had a heartbreaking loss to Argyle in the regional tournament, but gosh, they are so good. And then Hardin-Jefferson, we played them last year in the state championship game, and they had a heartbreaking loss. And so both have great teams, great talent. I think this could be the best game of the state tournament. So I can't wait to watch it, how it plays out. And again, you guys are awesome, and looking forward to that game. So Chance, you want to start it out, man? What do you think? Tell us a little bit about your team, and then maybe a little bit about Hardin-Jefferson.
Well, I think looking at 4A in general, this might be the the best 4A, 4 teams that have made it since I've been, coaching 4A for a while. I mean, I think all 4 of us, Hardin-Jefferson, myself, and Fredericksburg and Brownsboro are all really good teams that have a chance to win it. So that's what's going to be so exciting. I mean, when you're looking at it and every team has at least 33 wins and very few losses, so that's what's going to be exciting. Our team is, we were here 2 years ago, and then we actually played Hardin-Jefferson 3 years ago in the state championship game. But those teams, I've lost all those kids. I had one girl that was kind of my 6th or 7th man when we lost to Fairfield 2 years ago, and now she's Maddie Lumsden. And so she's really the only one on our team with experience in that. So our kids are probably one of the youngest and least experienced teams out of this group, and then you've got Fredericksburg, who made it, who we played 2 years ago in the state semifinals. A lot of those kids are older. And then, I feel like with Hardin-Jefferson, they've got the experience as their 3rd time in 4 years. They got Ashlyn Jackson, who's the only McDonald's All-American. And then I think, with Molly Beavers and Kendall Sneed, those are 2 kids that are a lot, last year they were really good and they're even better this year, Division I type kids, and just a really athletic team. And our team, I think we're kind of more balanced, but as far as we don't have anybody that scores close to 20, but we've had several kids, I think 7 or 8, that have led us in scoring. So I think it's just going to be a fun matchup. It was fun going against Coach Fogo and his team 3 years ago. And that's good in our profession when we have coaches that we get along with and we embrace that competition and not, we look forward to it, playing them. And, I've been watching them from afar all year long, like I did Canyon and a lot of teams. And so with Hardin-Jefferson, we know how athletic they are. We know how they can score in a hurry. They played an unbelievably tough schedule. Their losses are to 6A schools who are really, really good. And so we know that for our sake, we're going to have to really, we're going to have to do things right. We're going to have to not turn the ball over much and just hope that we can kind of maintain that intensity and do a good job blocking out.
Well, Mike Fogo, man, congratulations. You had a great season as well. Chance mentioned that you upped your schedule. You played a tougher schedule, and do you think that's paid off?
It has. Sometimes you can get too complacent playing your style or your brand of basketball, and that really forced us to get out of our comfort zone in some games where you played teams that everybody was 6'1", or I think a team from Canada we played and it was 6'3" across the board. And so you better be able to do some half court stuff, because just running and pressing all the time doesn't really do it. So it really did make us get out of our comfort zone and kind of work on things that if we stayed around this area, you wouldn't really have to. And so, I think a big benefit of playing, teams with more depth is you had to use your bench more than normally you would have, say, stay in a lower class schedule. But, to counter on what Chance said, these 4 teams left, man, everybody's really good. Great shooters on all the teams. Brownsboro's got, I want to say 10 seniors. Sometimes having seniors in crunch time, that matters. I know against both Joe and Chance, like we got bit by seniors, and sometimes, a senior leader that's been there, done that, there's a calming presence that matters this time of year. And so, Fredericksburg, great shooters across the whole team. Chance got a whole bench full of great shooters. So all these games are going to be really, really fun, because there's a lot of, I don't want to say star power, but there's a lot of great players that you cannot leave and let them get rolling or have a chance to have space. It's one of those, it's going to be great games to watch. I know that.
Yeah, this 4A is going to be really, really outstanding. Unfortunately, this will be the last time that we see Argyle in 4A for probably a while, because they're going up to 5A next year. They go up to 5A. Canyon a few years ago dropped from 5A to 4A, and that's really the transition zone. We mentioned, or you all mentioned, Ashlyn Jackson. I've got a great interview with her. Check her out on my YouTube. I was talking to her last year talking to her a few weeks ago about how last year it looked like Hardin-Jefferson had it one big lead early, then Canyon took the lead into the 4th, and HJ led by 4 late, and then Chloe Callahan went Harry Callahan in the final couple of minutes. And Ashlyn mentioned about how the disappointment in losing, not just from the cliche form, but they kind of learned that heartbreak as they went in undefeated. They didn't have the strength of schedule last year, a lot of it because of the of the virus. And that's what makes this game, the 4A semifinal, so dangerous, because you have what might be, some people think, one of the top players in the nation. You have Argyle, who, just like Hardin-Jefferson last time they were at the Dome, they had heartbreak with that big lead that they lost. Fairfield won, and who knew Fairfield would go on and get to where they're at now. And so I want you both just briefly talking about what it's like not having things go your way in a state final, and then having to fight to get everybody back there.
Well, sadly, in our profession for coaches, I think the losses are a lot tougher than the wins, and so, it's those are the things you remember, and it's harder to get over. And I do remember 2 years ago, when we lost to Fairfield in a heartbreaker, and, as a coach, you think, will you ever get that opportunity to coach in it again? And so I think too, along the way, you learn to enjoy every moment that you get and try to really enjoy the experience. And it is tough. It's those heartbreaking games, and, you're going to have a winner and a loser, and I remember afterwards reading about that, and somebody said our game with Fairfield is probably one of the top games in the last 15 or 20 years down there, just the way it went, the ending and the everything. And so I think you look back and just say, hey, you got to be a part of those moments. And so our kids, I think you got to take advantage of every opportunity and just be ready to play. But to me, if you make it to San Antonio and you're playing down here, you've done something special. And so I don't think, as far as the pressure, I think getting to the state tournament is often the hard part. When you get to state, you just got to go down there and have a good time and try to block out the distractions, but enjoy the moment. You get to play on the highest level with a lot of coaches and a lot of fans there. And that's something that is extremely special, and what I love about our state.
Mike?
Yeah, that's spot on. I couldn't agree more. Sometimes you can get caught up in the moment and miss the good stuff. Like I remember when we played Chance a couple of years ago, us sitting back behind the stands, we chatted for about 20 minutes or so. I don't remember a whole lot of the games. I remember sitting at that table, just the camaraderie of all the extra stuff that goes along that's really easy to miss if you let it go. As far as leading up to it, to get a constant buy-in over and over and over from kids, it's a long season. Playoffs, the last 2 weeks, it's long. Days are long. You get home late. And I think I saw my wife this morning for the first time in a week. It seemed like we got to sit and have breakfast. So, the grind that you go through, really starting in the fall to now, to keep that focus when, your community may have an expectation that you're supposed to be there, where there's a whole lot of factors that go in. They're high school girls first and foremost, and they have other things that they're doing. To get the buy-in and to keep it the whole time, that's really the challenge early in the year, in the summer, in the spring, leading up to it. So it's not just right now, everything kind of culminates now. So
people, again, we're talking a lot about Hardin-Jefferson and Argyle. The UIL, as you mentioned earlier, does not draw based on power, strength of schedule, or power rankings or polls. They do it straight by record to protect the top 2 teams by record, and it was just a 50-50 flip that this would happen. I don't want to forget about that Brownsboro-Fredericksburg game. Brownsboro is in for the 7th time, still looking for their first title, 38-2 under Jeremy Durham. Heavy senior-laden class that is in there. Apologies, I don't have a ton of info. Hopefully, maybe one of y'all can mention it, but I do want to mention Fredericksburg. It was Kerry Groen is the head coach, Christy Dance is the assistant, and it was Lauren Danz, the sophomore DANZ, who had that winning shot. And a lot of people really forget about Region 4 and that whoever plays them in 4A, it's usually supposed to be a run over. Fredericksburg 2 years ago gave Argyle a fight for at least the first 3 quarters before Argyle was finally able to pull away. Last year, Bernie was only down by 4 at the half in the semifinals against Hardin-Jefferson before Hardin-Jefferson pulled away. And talking to a little bit with some of the Fredericksburg folks, so I know they're anxious to get back, just because they know, and Bernie knows, that they had a shot at winning that state semifinal game. And Brownsboro, as I mentioned, in for the 7th time. Anybody want to open up a little bit about the Brownsboro Bears, one of those great teams out of the East Texas area, or the eastern side of the state?
Well, hey, I remember last year, I think they had a good playoff run, and I believe they lost to Pinkston, Dallas Pinkston. Do you guys remember that? And of course, Pinkston was really a good team that we barely got by, I think, a 2-point game. And I remember Tate saying that Brownsboro has some great shooters. I think they had a good post player last year. And like I said, Jeremy does a great job with his program, just like these guys do. And so they've been knocking on the door and finally got in out of a tough region. So I'm sure Brownsboro is probably ready for the moment. And Fredericksburg, I think they may have some of those kids back, Chance, but I think they also have a really good sophomore class. We have some friends in Fredericksburg, and I think they've got some really good young players. So
Heavy sophomore class.
heavy
A lot of
sophomore class.
The
So
Franzens, the McKinnons, the Gronas. Those are the
Yes.
Dans who I mentioned. So this Bernie Fredericksburg rivalry is going to be going on for a little. I didn't mean to jump in, Joe, but when you talk Region 4, and we're talking about teams that I don't know much. In fact, I know nothing, but I know a little bit about that Region 4, and I think that state final game. A lot of people are going to probably be thinking, well, we're going to hand the trophy out in the semifinals. I think that state final game is going to be a lot more interesting than people think, if anything else, because the Hardin-Jefferson Argyle game could be brutal, a very physical game. The Brownsboro Fredericksburg game flies under the radar, and we may see that what we saw a few years ago, where people forget about teams that are not used to being there, like Fairfield a couple of years ago. And I think this is going to be really, really interesting to say the least. So I know everybody's got to get going, and we definitely appreciate everybody stopping by. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention off the top, Mike Fogo has a substitute teacher this week. He mentioned a substitute teacher.
Wow.
What are they doing in class this week, Mike?
I'm here today. They got me one, but I go teach them. I'm just taking a quick little break right now.
I never
You
got a
said-
I gotta
substitute
keep the
teacher. Did
schedule
you,
normal.
Chance? I never got a substitute teacher. Hardin-Jefferson, man, they got something good going there.
I'm sitting in my class. They offered it, which was kind of cool, but you got to keep the routine.
Yeah, definitely. Well, gentlemen, appreciate the time, Mike and Chance. The state semifinals, for those of you that are not up to date on the schedule, Argyle and Hardin-Jefferson will play at 1:30. Brownsboro and Fredericksburg will follow. This could probably be the best state semifinals by classification that we're going to have this season, and we'll see what happens. Gentlemen, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Chance.
y'all.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you guys.
Joe, we move on from what's going to be a brutal 4A to a 6A that, well, could be brutal. It could also be the DeSoto show. DeSoto is back into the tournament. It's kind of strange. They've only been to the semis 4 times ever because of how strong Duncanville has been so many times. DeSoto beat Duncanville 3 times this year. And Joe, we were remarking before we started that there's a lot of college teams that would struggle to beat Duncanville once, much less 3 times. And if you beat, you know, the old saying, once is an accident, twice is on purpose, 3 times we get you in here and we talk about that. And Andrea Robinson, the outstanding head coach of DeSoto, who was so excited to appear on with Joe. And Andrea, appreciate you joining us. Before we talk about what's going to be happening at the Dome, I got to ask you, how do you beat Duncanville once, much less 3 times?
Man, I'm telling you, it's not easy. I tell you that it's not an easy task at hand. But we just, each time we play them, we reinvent it. It's always the first time. We build off of each time, but we never look back and feel like we beat them. So every time we play them, it's a new, fresh game, a fresh approach to every game. So I never allow them to get comfortable. So we just have a fresh approach each time that we play them. But, the rivalry is so strong. It's never easy. It is never easy. That's why those games are always so close.
Yeah, and this
Hey,
is
I can remember, Greg, I can remember years ago, DeSoto and Duncanville, when Larry Gold was the head coach at DeSoto, and they had a rivalry with Duncanville back then. But back then, they had a difficult time ever beating Duncanville. And so I think there's a lot of history to that rivalry.
Oh, yeah.
And, I would love to get to a chance to watch some of those games. So there's some great athletes out on the court. And hey, Greg, I just wanted to mention too, what a great job Andrea does at coaching. I mean, everywhere she goes, she wins games. So she's doing something right. And grateful to have her on your show. And this DeSoto team, one of the top teams in the country. And I know you talk about colleges. Hey, they're all trying to recruit all her players. So she's done a great job of getting them ready for the next level.
And I will say this, Joe, when I was talking, because Claude Mathis, a good friend of mine, DeSoto football won a playoff game at the Alamo Dome this year. I texted Claude. I said, Claude, love to get Andrea Robinson on. And he said, it might be tough. She's intense. She's always locked in. And then I also sent a note to the social media handle, and they said the same thing. And when I mentioned Joe Lombard was on there, all of a sudden things kind of changed. Nobody wants to be on with me, but when Joe was on there, everybody's like, I'm dropping what I'm doing. I think Nick Saban would come on for if we had the name of Joe Lombard.
No, I'm telling you, I remember watching Coach Lombard when I was growing up. Man, what a living legend. Coach, it means the world to hear you say anything good about me. So I'll take it. I mean, what an honor. Man, I'm watching you growing up, and now I am getting to be on a podcast or just to be on a show with you. Wow. Amazing. And like we were saying before, every single player that has ever played for me will know who you are. I talk about you all the time, just the great things that you do at Canyon, or that you've done, and just the phenomenal coach that you are, the living legend that you are. It's the coaches it's just watching you has been awesome. But anybody that's ever played for me, they know who you are.
Oh, you're so kind. Well, I've coached for forever. It seems like I know most of these coaches in the state, but now, Andrea, some of them are in their 20s, and I'm losing touch with some of them just a little bit because I know you're at least 30, Andrea. And so,
sure. I'll take it.
But yeah, Coach Greg, I can remember Andrea. What a great job she did at Fort Worth Dunbar. Did you coach anywhere before that? You were.
No, that was my first head job. That was my first head job. I was, my first head job. And I just remember watching you all the time in the state tournament. But I do have some West Texas background. I was out there in Midland for a year, and I coached out there. And just the tradition, the rich basketball, the tradition out there was amazing. I tell everybody that was my best coaching out there. Just watching you guys out there coach and how y'all prepare was phenomenal.
Well, we all learn from each other,
Yes.
And that's what I did. I tried to learn from so many others. Dean Weiss was the guy that was a mentor for me, and that's why, but anyway, that's the neat thing about coaching, Greg, is that so many great relationships and fun people that are like each other, and you have a common bond. You feel for somebody when they get beat, and there you go. And in that book, I talk a lot about frustration and disappointment on those games where we did lose. And Andrea, no matter how good you are, it's going to happen sometime, and you just don't want it to happen this year, right?
Not this year. I've had my time, my disappointment. I mean, you haven't had very many disappointments, but I've had
more
my
than
share.
You would think. Yeah, more than you know.
But I'm not trying to be disappointed this year, Coach. Not this year, but I definitely have had my share, and they're hard, but it's part of growth, and it makes us who we are today.
That's exactly right.
We're gonna have to get a commercial break in at some point. This is turning into an episode of Sally Jesse Raphael, which Andrea probably wouldn't remember, but Joe and I do back in the day. Well, DeSoto, surprisingly, they've been, well, not surprising, is they've been to the semifinals 3 of the last 4 years. What was surprising was they'd only been there one time before that. And really 2019 was kind of a shift in 6A girls basketball. Kathy Self-Morgan stepped down. Won't get into all that stuff. A lot of people know about that. We saw South Grand Prairie, who's in the state semifinals and did play DeSoto in a state quarterfinal before that. They beat Duncanville as a 4 seed. A lot of people thought, well, you know what? Duncanville was distracted. There wasn't anything going on, or they just weren't in it. South Grand Prairie got to the 4th round that year, and they've been rising up. And now they're into the state semis. We'll talk about South Grand Prairie in a moment. DeSoto will take on San Antonio Clark here in the San Antonio area in the late game Friday night. The early game is South Grand Prairie against Humble Summer Creek. And DeSoto, as you mentioned, 33-2. They beat Mount Verde out of Florida. There are 2 losses to a school in Washington, D.C. They've just been so in touch, so to speak. They beat Tomball Memorial by 42 in the fourth round. They beat Duncanville by 13 in the state quarterfinals. That was a double-digit lead most of the way. They beat Duncanville by 4 in the regular season meetings. Well, Andrea, we know about the name, we know about you, but tell us about a couple of players that maybe that, because you have a lot of players that came back from last year's team that beat a then undefeated Cy Creek to win the state title last year.
Yeah, so we're a really senior heavy team. A lot of these young ladies were on that 2019 team, and they were all freshmen. And so these were also ladies that I kind of watched grow up, kind of been with them since they were in the 6th grade. I remember watching them when they were in the middle school. And, with this group of ladies, we were just talking about this moment that we're about to go through this week, just what we're doing now. And so there's 7 of them. And one of them is down with the injury. She tore ACL. So we have 6 left. So there's 6 Division I kids that are here, 6 seniors that we have that we're looking to help carry this team. Hopefully, we'll win another state championship. So there's 6. We have Samaya Smith, who's one of our post players, Amina Muhammad, who's one of our post players, Tiana Heron. We have Yana Thompson, Jamia Harris, and I think Jaya Perry will be the last one. I think that's 6. And then we also have Michaela Gatewood, who's the one that tore ACL, who will not, be playing the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But 7 seniors. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. We obviously wish her the best. This one is so hard for me to be able to talk about because Clark's our local school. We know San Antonio has struggled so much to even get to the state finals. I think it's only happened 6 or 7 times. Judson finally got over that hump 3 years ago. I was actually just getting ready to repost that on my YouTube. And as I was telling Joe before he came on when we were in a break, I still can't believe that Judson won that game. Kira White and Karina Carter and what they did and all the emotion that came out of it. I got to ask you, Andrea, that what was it like? I don't know if saying being on the wrong side of history would be politically correct, but it was the first time the Metro San Antonio won a title and we were celebrating it. What was that like on y'all's end and having to get past that?
I mean, it was hard. And I think it was a part of what birthed a lot of fire in us last year. I mean, it was disappointing. We fought really hard to get there. We had battled a lot of injuries. We overcame a lot of disappointments. And when we finally got there to fall short the way we did, it was tough. But it's part of one of those disappointments that causes fire and creates growth. And it was a big part of what we built our season on last year. And, we're certainly not trying to repeat that again this year. But no, it was tough. It was really tough to get over. Tough disappointment.
For Clark, and it's kind of nice. I finally have a team that I know something about, and not just having to rely on Joe and our guest to tell us about. Clark is a school that was a dynasty in volleyball in the early part of the 2000s, won a state title in 2003. They got back to the state semis in volleyball in 2004, had not been back to the state quarters in anything since. They have done or state semis, I should say. They did a great job getting to the quarters in volleyball, boys basketball, girls basketball, but their Waterloo was just the state quarterfinals. And it was always tough when they would lose and somebody would go on, some of the O'Connor volleyball teams, some of the other basketball teams, but they finally got over that hump. They fought off Cibolo Steel, who finished 3rd in that Judson Wagner district. They have some players with some famous last names. The sisters, Ariana Roberson and Aaliyah Roberson, they both play volleyball. They watched when they beat Brandeis this year, and Brandeis went on to win the state championship in volleyball. Their older brother is former and hopefully soon to be current NBA player, Andre Roberson. Caitlin Whitlock plays volleyball there. Haley Adams is a very scrappy basketball player for them. And when Andrea, you're used to playing with having players and coaching against those that have siblings that have played in the league, WNBA, NBA, overseas. How much stock or how do you prepare when you have a team that has last names of players that have gone on to the pros?
I mean, you better come ready to play. I mean, no, it's tough. I mean, we understand, we understand that they're athletic, they're long, and of course they have good, we always say good DNA. So we just have to be prepared to play. And we understand that when you get to this point in the state tournament, everybody can play, everybody's good. And I always tell my kids, you're just going to have to be better. You're going to have to be prepared. They're going to have to come to play. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to be hungry and you're going to have to be better. You're going to have to come to play. So, I mean, they're going to have to be ready to play. And that's kind of how we approach it. But yeah, we definitely understand we have our hands full with Clark and the two Robeson sisters. Clearly understand that.
Yeah, Rihanna Hoey has done such a great job there. And we'll have a little bit for those of you here in San Antonio. We'll have a little bit with them coming up later on the week. Coach was not able to join us. She did say she wants 4 copies of the Joe Lombard book, More Than a Coach, which I know we plug a lot. We want to make sure that everybody knows about that. And Clark actually played Duncanville, lost by 6. So they have that experience. They beat Red Oak. Mentioned that San Antonio is slowly growing. They beat Reagan twice this year. Reagan, who had a coaching change, had one player that transferred out. They still have an outstanding player that'll be back next year, but they got past. And a lot of us thought maybe it would be the Rattlers that would be the team that was here. The other semifinal, Humble Summer Creek, 38-2 out of the Houston area, taking on the aforementioned South Grand Prairie. Now, we've talked about South Grand Prairie and their rise. You played them back when you were in Region 1 had to beat them one year in the quarters to get to the semis. I know your hands are full at Duncanville, but tell us about South Grand Prairie, because that's a school that in the last 3 years has gone from a Cinderella to a serious contender.
No, yeah, coach has done a great job with that program. I mean, I think Samantha Morrow came over there and started building everything and kind of, begin getting them where they are now. But no, they're doing a great job. I mean, a couple years ago, he had a great system. Boy, they can shoot the 3-ball better than anybody around here. So no, they play hard. Offensively, they're good. They're well coached. I mean, they're just a really good program, very well-rounded team. So yeah, absolutely very well-rounded team, very, very good program.
They beat Mansfield Timberview by 20, who's a 5A power.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have 5A on in a little while. And the rise of Frisco ISD. They beat Frisco Memorial, who survived that 5A regional to get there. They beat San Antonio Wagner by 24. Wagner won their district, lost in the first round. LA Sneed, by the way, better keep an eye and an ear on her, one of the outstanding freshmen. She'll be a really good player as the years go on. Let me ask you this, Andrea, because we know Region 1, Region 2, the line always splits right down with Fort Worth in 1, Dallas in 2, and then the outlying areas, depending on where that line falls. Is there any difference in style between Region 1 and Region 2, girls or boys?
I don't really think so. Everyone's really very athletic. So I think in that sense, it's pretty much the same. And I think the coaching out here is phenomenal. Everybody's very well coached. The programs are solid. So I don't think there's a huge, big difference in the style of play. Most of the teams are extremely athletic and competitive. So I haven't seen a major difference. And this is my first year, I think, in Region 2. Well, my second year in Region 2. So I haven't seen a huge difference. It's just extremely competitive out here. Region 1 R2 is competitive. And I even thought with SGP, that was the impressive win with the Denton Braswell school. I was curious to see who was going to come out of that one, even with the Plano East. I mean, that region this year was huge. But no, I think it's pretty even, but on both sides. It's extremely athletic, if I would have to say.
Andrea, where are you guys at now in the national rankings?
Oh, wow. I don't even really keep up with that.
Hey, I know you do. I know it's somewhere in the top 5, isn't it?
I think so. Yes, It is. I try to stay out of all the hype, but sometimes it's hard to do that.
Well, my point is, we went to the Nike National Tournament 3 times back in the early 2000s. And in 2003, we won the USA National Championship. And the point I wanted to make was, though, we go to these big tournaments. I could go to the Mansfield tournament. It was every bit as good as these national tournaments that I went to. And they would all have, 7 or 8 early Division I signees. But a lot of them were more like AAU teams. Whereas in Texas, these teams are well coached.
Yes.
They're more organized. They've got a plan, and they can well-rounded, like you said. I don't know if you found that to be true or not, but the state of Texas, Greg, is a great high school girls basketball state. And so Andrea made some. Have you guys won the USA national thing yet, or?
No, we
You're
we went out
close.
to that invitational and we end up losing to Sidwell in the championship. Sidwell
Yeah.
Friends out there in Washington, and they're pretty solid. But
Oh
I
yeah.
agree with you 100%. I found that Texas basketball is pretty dang on good. I think the kids are competitive out here. They're tough, and the coaches are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Texas coaches do a great job in preparing and coaching our kids. And I don't think there's anything like Texas basketball. I
Yeah.
definitely did find that out. So I agree with you 100%.
And Greg, in some states, you don't have to be in Texas. You have to be a full-time school employee to be a head coach. In other states, they can hire anybody they want to just bring them in part-time. And so you may have a lawyer that's coaching a team out of Los Angeles or something like that. But
Yeah.
I think our coaches are so highly professional.
Yes.
And everybody shares information and goes to clinics and try to get better. And our programs speak for themselves. We have great programs. And of course, DeSoto right now is leading our state, I think, and being a great representative. But Andrea can tell you, man, I tell you, there's great teams that are in our state of Texas that, other parts of the country may not know about, but we know about them here.
I totally agree with you, Coach. I really do. And that was one of the first things I said, man, Texas is just different. Texas is different. I mean, our kids are so competitive and our coaches are good. Our coaches are really good. I mean, we do a great job.
Athletic period. I think having the athletic period helps.
Yes.
You don't have them just necessarily during basketball season. I think that helps. Okay,
Yeah.
Greg. Anyway, DeSoto.
Well, I was
watch
going
out
to just
for them.
chime in that Ashlyn Jackson, who I had a chance to interview, you can check out her story on my YouTube channel. I got to interview her. She was amazed at how, and it's really a growing trend that the girls basketball is growing so much, not just here in Texas, but in the nation. The women outdrew the men in terms of audience and ratings. Last year, women's, of course, were down here in San Antonio, and we'd love to be able to talk more about that. Hopefully we will be able to at another time, but I don't want to forget about Humble Summer Creek. They're 38-2. I know a lot of their fans are throwing stuff at the computer screen that hurt my head, but they're 38-2. Carlessa Dixon is the head coach. They've blown out essentially all of their playoff opponents, winning all 5 of their playoff games by double figures, 3 of them by at least 38 points. And I'll open the floor up to either one of y'all if y'all will share with us a little bit about Humble Summer Creek, because it had been another creek, Side Creek, that had been dominating the last couple of years, but they went out in the early rounds, and now we have a team that's in for the second time. And of course, you all, I think, went up against, I think you mentioned, Andrea, in 2019.
We did. No, Coach Dixon has done a great job with that program. Man, I mean, she's kind of really put Summer Creek on the map. They are extremely athletic. I got a chance to see them a little bit out here in Dallas. I mean, she's known for her defense. So, I mean, so she's going to get up and get after it defensively. I think they have that kid going to Auburn. And so, no, they're solid, extremely athletic. Oh boy, my lights kind of, let me grab these censored. We're censored. All right, there we go.
Welcome to live Zoom.
Sorry, I know, right? She did Summer Creek and took out the lights. No, but no, they're very athletic. So, no, great program, very, very good program.
Yeah, they're 38-2. They beat College Station, who we'll talk about in the 5A segment, who got to the state semis, beat Beaumont United by 61. They beat Judson by 24, beat Steele by 6. Their only losses, one to Cedar Park, who has not lost to anybody. Their Cedar Park has won like 66 out of 67 in a row. Their other loss to a school out of San Diego, California. Well, this has been so much fun where it's kind of been like Days of Our Lives. Sally, Jesse, Raphael, local cable access show. Andrea, it really enjoyed having you come on, and I know your schedule is always tight, and so we appreciate you taking some time out. I don't know what you were more excited about, getting past Duncanville for the third time, get to the semis, be able to share a conversation with Joe Lombard. I think it's neck and neck.
It's pretty. I think it's the Coach Lombard. And Coach, I'm going to get out and get that book. And Coach, it was such an honor to get a chance to speak with you. Good to see you.
Oh, thanks, Andrea. Good to see you, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and go win that thing.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'm going to get the book.
All right.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much to Andrea Robinson and of DeSoto for stopping by on our 6A preview. By the way, Joe, we've officially now changed the name of the show starting next year. It's going to be called Joe Lombard's Fireside Chat, hosted by Mr. Bota. You thought Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Fireside Chats, which I know you remember him and Theodore Roosevelt.
About the same age.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah, so look for that coming soon. Well, we have one classification left, and we're really grateful that we've been able to have at least one head coach on in each classification. And our final Class 5A, joining us right now is Jeff Williams of Amarillo High. Amarillo High, a team that sometimes gets forgotten about with all the Canyon madness. They finally got past Canyon a handful of years ago when Canyon was 5A, went on to win the title. And I know, Jeff, just like with so many other coaches that have been on, you and Joe go back a long way, rivals in 5A, and it's fun to have you here. And it's obviously great to see y'all get past Lubbock Cooper, which I know is always brutally tough, and what Laverne does over there. And congratulations, first off, on getting back to San Antonio.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's quite an honor to be able to represent Region 1. A lot of good basketball in this region, and to be able to come out of this region and get to the state tournament is something that is very exciting, and it's a grind to get that done. So I'm very proud of our girls and our coaching staff to be able to get back to the state level. It's really exciting times for us.
Yeah, and I know you and Joe obviously go back. By the way, I was actually incorrect. It was 2018 and 2019 back-to-back state championships for Amarillo High. They have 4 championships total. They will play the late game against a newcomer, Frisco Memorial, who finally, speaking about getting over humps, they finally got over the Frisco Liberty hump. Liberty, who is about the only school in the state that can run that brutally efficient stall. Memorial finally was able to get by them. That'll be the late game at the Dome. And in the early game, it'll be Cedar Park. Donnie Ott, we had him on previously, taking on College Station. College Station beat Pflugerville Hendrickson, scored the last 6 points to win in the Austin area, which is really rising. We'll get to that early matchup in a moment, but let's talk about this Amarillo team against Frisco Memorial. And Amarillo, it's been 3 years since we've seen you here coaching the Sandys, Jeff, in the state semifinals. Remind us a little bit about your team.
Well, we've got a really good senior leader in Briley Barnes that has been to the state tournament as a freshman. She didn't see the floor in that particular game, but she's been there. And so I thought it was really important, and we've talked about this. I want to get that, get back to the state tournament, because until kids get there, they don't understand just what a huge venue that it is, the excitement of the trip and all those different type of things. And so we were able to get them, back to the state tournament, and, Briley was a big part of that. And so that was important for us to get back at that level and get that done. 2 years ago, got beat by Timberview at the buzzer. We had an opportunity to maybe go back a third time, and it was important for us to get back. But Briley Barnes has been a great leader for us all year long, getting back to this level.
Yeah, and looking at beating Lubbock Cooper in the third round by 13, a lot of people, I know Joe was extremely high on that matchup, and how whoever survived that would probably be at the Dome. Joe gets his predictions right. He got the Sands prediction right. He actually got the Argyle beating his team Canyon prediction. Hey, Joe's about the only one in the state who actually does good predictions. Fourth round, beat Timberview by 23, which we mentioned in our 6A segment, how hard it is to beat Duncanville once, and DeSoto did it 3 times. Beating Timberview by 23, there's a few teams out there in the college ranks that wouldn't do that. And then beating a very scrappy Lake Dallas team in the state quarterfinal rounds, and 32-5. One of those wins against Canyon High earlier this year beat San Antonio Johnson, who had the Cinderella run to round number 3. And Jeff, I want you to talk a little bit. We hear from Joe all the time about life in the Panhandle, where the kids were in the bassinet, they have their bottle, they have their pacifier, and they have a basketball. We hear all the stories from Joe, but share one briefly with us from your perspective.
Well, I mean, you're right. In the Panhandle of Texas, you've got Nazareth. My mom's a Naz girl, and I mean, you look all the way across Gruver, Amarillo High. You've got Canyon, a lot of great programs, and these kids they love the game from a very early age, and so. We've got tons of kids that have been just that way, that have come to camp since they were little bitty, and just been a part of our program. So you're right. Girls basketball in the Panhandle of Texas is really, I think, in my opinion, unmatched, anywhere around. And so we're very proud of that here in the Amarillo area. And it's a special place for girls basketball, that's for sure. And I'll tell you, it started with the Bob Schneiders of the world, and it started with, Coach Lombard. And if you didn't do your due diligence and work your tail off, you're going to get embarrassed in this area. And so I think it's made all of us better. And the combination of just really going against good coaches night in and night out, and then driving our girls to having that passion for basketball has really made a hotbed for women's basketball in this area.
We'd mentioned about with Andrea just in our last segment that talking to Ashlyn Jackson of 4A Hardin-Jefferson and how with both of them, how the girls/women's basketball has really grown here in Texas and here in the nation, where the women's tournament that was here in San Antonio, the NCAA outdrew the men in so many different ways. And speaking of how the women's game may be better than the men, I saw one of the teams you beat. Yes, it's true, folks. Amarillo High beat the Thunder. No, not the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are near the bottom of the Western Conference with the Spurs and the Rockets, but the Dallas Blue Thunder. I guess Oklahoma City folks forced the Thunder to change their name to Dallas Blue Thunder, but I'm fairly certain you all would beat the Thunder no matter what.
Hey, they were good enough. It does surprise me, Greg. I mean, they were good enough to do that.
Well, you all have in the semifinal Frisco Memorial. We mentioned the Warriors, a first-time school that's in, but you talk about the brutality of DeSoto versus Duncanville, the brutality of the Panhandle. Frisco ISD is right up there as well with what Frisco Liberty did, and the fact that Memorial and Liberty were both highly ranked all year. In fact, Frisco Memorial beat two Frisco schools in the tournament to get here. Lone Star in the third round, and they beat North Forney in the fourth round, and then Liberty by 8 in the quarterfinals. Ross Reedy always does that stall real well. And Jeff, that's a team that maybe the Panhandle doesn't know a lot about, but when you see what district they come out of, you learn very quickly that that's a brutal district and what that team had to survive, just like what Amarillo had to survive.
Right. I mean, they went 17-1 in that district, like you talked about. 18 district ranked games is quite the grind. And, if they're in a weaker district, that would be detrimental to, them making deep runs like this. But the strength of their district and to come out of there 17-1 is pretty impressive. Like you said, Lone Star, and then, of course, Liberty. I mean, Liberty is so well coached. Coach Reedy does such a great job, and that's you just almost expect Liberty to be in that position to get out. They were again this year. And if Memorial can go in toe-to-toe with Liberty and come away with that state berth, they've done a really nice job and have a really nice team, because beating Liberty in that rounds has not recently, of late, been an easy task at all.
And Frisco ISD keeps expanding. The two school districts that always seem to keep expanding are Northside here in San Antonio, Frisco in the Metroplex, and Katy ISD in just outside of the Houston area. So this Frisco Memorial team has only 3 seniors on the team, so it's a team that very well could keep going. What have you learned about the Warriors?
Just that they play. I mean, they're a very deep team, a very athletic team. They've got some length. They're a type of team that'll blow right by you if you're not ready to move and keep somebody in front of you. We've got to be good about getting in the gaps and just maybe take some charges. We're good at getting in gaps and making those tough plays. But they've just got a really high motor, and then that translates into their defensive actions where they're mixing up different combinations of presses. They are also very active in the half-court defense mindset that, they're trapping and rotating and creating an atmosphere out there that's really tough, trying to, run efficient offense. So they try to disrupt you, get you out of what you do, and they're good at it. And so we just got to weather those storms, take care of the basketball, get our girls in the right place, identify what defense that they're in, and be in the right offensive mindset so that we can have some success against their high pressure.
And we mentioned, Joe and I were talking in our 4A segment, how you have 4 teams that it's going to be so brutal with Hardin-Jefferson, with Argyle playing in the semis when some people thought that might have been the state championship game, a Fredericksburg team that got a steal and a layup at the buzzer to advance, and then Brownsboro being the 4th, how that one may be brutal. This one, maybe a clash of different styles. Cedar Park won the title last year. They're undefeated. I've been able to see them a couple times along with our good friend Donnie Ott. College Station, they scored the last 6 points to beat Pflugerville-Hendrickson. You have the rise of Frisco ISD, the Panhandle. The rise of Austin, I think, is coming with Cedar Park getting there, and how a couple other schools, Burnett, Pflugerville-Hendrickson, both got to the quarterfinals out of the much tougher Region 3 in their classifications. And I'll ask you both about this, about the potential, about how there's so many different dynamics in Class 5A.
Right. Well, you have Cedar Park returning all their players, I think, Jeff, from last year when they were the state champions. So I think in a lot of people's minds, Cedar Park will be the favorite. Of course, they're nationally ranked and very, very good. But don't overlook Amarillo High. They're good too. And to get by Lubbock Cooper, who was a great team in our area, Greg. I mean, Amarillo High has to be one of those great teams as well. So Jeff does a great job. In fact, Greg, I saw Jeff when he was 19 years old. He was the coach at Dumas.
Here comes the fireside chat.
Yeah, he was at Dumas at 19, and then he finally made it to Amarillo High, and of course doing a great job now, and has one of the really great programs in the state of Texas. So it's fun to see all these young guys grow up. And Jeff, I was telling Greg, I said, I know a lot of people, but those people are 21 now. I don't know them.
Right, exactly.
It's gotten past me now, but I used to know even those young guys like that, like yourself. But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching your team play. I know you're on a good roll and playing with confidence, and so when a team's playing with confidence, man, there's a lot of good things that can happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say that Cedar Park, they won it last year, like I said, undefeated this year, have some really impressive wins. But, like you said, that's what you get down there in the state tournament. And, there's 4 teams right now that are playing their best basketball of the year. And so that's what makes it so exciting. It almost seems like the regional level tournament is almost more nerve-wracking than this. It's strange how that goes, but not because you don't have better opponents or every bit as good of an opponent, but you just set in that scenario where you're going, the grind to get out of your region, and all 4 of us are feeling that same way, is tough. And so now this is a reward for being able to do that. So we're excited.
Right.
Yeah.
I always thought the regional championship game was the biggest game of the year. But I know when you get to the state tournament, you don't want to just get there. I mean, you want to play too, and have a chance. And so, but that regional thing was always a thing for me. I always thought, man, if a team made it the state tournament, they've had a heck of a year. And but your experience, you'll have a chance to win it all. So yeah, wish you the best with that.
Thanks,
and,
John. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So Greg, this guy can coach, and he's got a great team. He's got some athletes too that are really good. So, and you know what? I think he's got like 1 senior, so they're going to be back again.
Yeah, Briley Barnes, the senior, actually have a couple other. They have a total of 4 on the roster. The Cedar Park College Station game, I'll pick up a little bit because Cedar Park, I've seen them a couple times. In fact, it's actually a rematch of a regular season game, which Cedar Park won by 40 points, 66-26. They're 35-0. They beat Duncanville. They beat them by 3. They beat San Antonio Johnson, who played really well towards the end of the season. They dominated Rhonda Farney and Georgetown and the rest of that district. In fact, they held Farney in the final game of the regular season to 24 points. I saw them. They beat Seguin by 50 in the first round. They beat San Antonio Edison by 46. We mentioned in an earlier preview about how Thomas Edison has almost 1,100 patents to his name, but none of those figuring out how to beat Cedar Park. Then the third round, I was at the game when they played New Braunfels Canyon, which I thought which remember last year they played to within 1 point after 3 before Cedar Park pulled away late. It was 13-0 out of the gate, and that game 71-23 was the final. And that thing, Canyon's not a field filler. New Braunfels Canyon, that is. They won their district. They thought they had a really good chance of being able to make it a competitive game, and they just shut down their top 2 rebounders. And the word to describe Cedar Park is meticulous about how they pay attention to their detail and everything. They beat Corpus Christi Vets in the 4th round of school. That is going to continue to rise, and I think you'll see them at the Dome sometime in the future. And then they played Liberty Hill, who district mate Liberty Hill, who beat district mate Georgetown in the 3rd round. Liberty Hill was down one of their key players, but it was only a 6-point game late in the 4th before Cedar Park pulled away for the victory. Cedar Park, Gisela Mall, who is a junior, she's going to have her pick of where she wants to play college ball, their leading scorer. Shelby Hayes, the chef, we mentioned how she makes a mean veggie soup. She's promised to bring some down to the Dome. I'm going to hold her to that. I'm going to make sure that Donnie knows about that, but which it's a very strong team. That Megan Woods is a senior. They play so well, and they're, like I mentioned, they're very detail oriented. And sometimes you wonder how a team is able to do so well. They don't put up 90 or 100 points a game. They did put 92 up on Georgetown Eastview in their second meeting, but they're just very methodical, very fundamental. And actually, I just got a note on my phone. I mentioned Shelby Hayes. Her signature dish is her mean veggie soup, which is outstanding from what I've been told. Donnie Ott's signature dish, Swanson TV dinner.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right.
That's
when you're hungry, those are good too.
Yeah, those are, College Station is in for the 2nd time in 3 years. They're a school that's done quite well in football. They actually lost in the state final on some people thought was a misapplication of the rules to Katie Pato, who those two have been in district for the rest of the sports. Pato is going up to 6th. College Station and Cedar Park are district mates for football. They're meeting in the state semifinals. 31-6 is the record. We mentioned that they lost by 40 to Cedar Park. They only beat South San by 6 here in San Antonio. And South San, a team that just kind of struggles in tougher districts. They lost to Lubbock Cooper by 13. Did beat Barbers Hill by 11. Barbers Hill was here not too long ago. And we mentioned the rise of the Austin area. They had to beat 3 Austin teams to get there. Pflugerville in the 2nd round, Pflugerville-Weiss, who's a relatively new school, in the 3rd round, upset Manville in the 4th round out of the Houston area, and then beat Hendrickson in the state quarterfinals. And gentlemen, I'll say this, that College Station is kind of fighting that uphill battle with the Austin area, where the Austin area is growing rapidly. It's still got a ways to go to catch Amarillo and DFW, but I'm telling you, you're going to see a lot more Austin area teams in the semis, in the finals, and winning titles over the next few years.
Well, that's great. I mean, you want to see good basketball in every region. And I remember we played Brian Rudder not too many years ago out of that College Station area, and they had some athletes, and I imagine College Station is pretty athletic as well. Seems like there's a lot of former Texas A&M people that raise families around that area, and there's some good athletes that come out of that section of the state. So anyway, I haven't seen them this year, but I bet they can go.
Yeah, another team with only 4 seniors on the roster. They also lost to Waco La Vega by 15. So maybe a potential Cinderella. We never know but that's the beautiful part, is when you don't pay much attention to a team, they're liable to turn around and beat you. Well, Jeff, I know you got to get prepared. I know you're taking the Joe Lombard special bus. Although I think Greyhound has the route from Amarillo all the way down here. Maybe you'll hook on with the Gruver folks who will do that outstanding send-off later on. Jeff, thank you so much for the time. Look forward to seeing you back here in San Antonio.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to get on here and talk about our girls and our region. And, it's going to be a great time, and we're excited about getting down there. And I always love talking to Coach Lombard, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, good luck, Jeff. Pulling for you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that state final could potentially be very interesting depending on who wins that late game. Again, Cedar Park plays College Station. We don't get Texas and Texas A&M in football anymore, but we kind of get the Austin area against the College Station area in the first semi, and then Frisco Memorial against Amarillo High, the late game on Thursday night. And that one could be a very high-scoring track meet. And we'll see how that plays out. Well, Joe, we're wrapping this up. We got to talk to at least one coach in every classification. That's something that we wish we could get all 24 on. We were able to talk about all 24. We started with a field of 1,500. Now we're down to the final 24. And Joe, we've done all the prognostications. We've done all the breakdowns. Now the only thing left is to see who ends up winning on Saturday and winning those golden trapezoids.
Well, your show is great, Greg. And I think a lot of basketball fans got a treat to get to see all these coaches and get to meet them, get to know them a little bit. What great programs. And it's going to be a great state tournament. There's going to be some super matchups. So I can't wait to be there and get to see a lot of that live action. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, the games start Thursday morning. First time in 3 years that the boys and girls basketball tournaments are back to normal. They'll have the honor teams. They're going to honor 2 of Joe's 934 state champions. So that's always a treat. It should be fun. And again, we'll plug one more time the book. This is More Than a Coach. It's a great book. haven't had a chance to go through all of it, but definitely it's a good read. We'll make sure all of the coaches that have appeared will get a chance to at least read that. Plus, we also have, I want to make sure I don't forget about this. We mentioned Joe Lombard wrote a book about winning state championships in the battle. Well, Dan Orlovsky also has a book out, his greatest accomplishments. We'll send a copy of that with everybody, as you can see it. Won't take very long to read that, and we'll always make sure we get everybody a bowl of Babs Lombard's famous tortilla soup. Although Donnie Ott said he's conflicted out and can't have it because Shelby is the chef, and they know about it. And I will say this: Carissa Ott, the head coach's wife up there, when I saw her last week, she was like, "Where's my soup?" So they do watch us. So when you're driving down, you'll have to take the Canyon team bus. Unfortunately, the team won't be there, but you're going to need that just to get all those gallons of soup down there, and probably going to have to hit a whole bunch of stores to get the oyster crackers.
Hey, we'd love to do that, but we'll see. We're going to take the old car down, so. I don't know how much room, Jeff, I got in there to haul soup, but
Joe, there is a thing called an airplane.
She can cook.
There is a modern invention called the airplane. They do have Rick Husband Airport in Amarillo. You can get there and take a flight to San Antonio, and it's only about 8 minutes from the dome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see you down there though. Slow and steady, like the tortoise.
Yeah, definitely. Well, folks, that's it for our preview. Again, make sure to follow on all social media at Mr. Bowtie 1982, the Texas High School Sports Machine on YouTube, and Joe Lombard's Fireside Chats, which we may make that the name. Joe, we'll try to catch up after the tournament to see break down all those games. But Joe, the only thing left to say is let's shuffle up and get everybody to San Antonio and welcome everybody to the state semifinals and finals.